So yeah, the discussion is the deity of Christ according to the Bible. If Jesus is God, we should see him making some divine claims, and we do see that. In John chapter 8 verse 58, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. Now he's drawing this from Exodus chapter 3 verse 14, because in Exodus chapter 3 verse 14, God says to Moses, tell Pharaoh, I am has sent you. So God in the Old Testament refers to himself as I am. So when Jesus takes this divine title of I am and applies that to himself in John 8:58, he's claiming to be the God who sent Moses. And the Jews understood what he was saying, because in verse 59 of John chapter 8, they tried to stone him to death for what they considered blasphemy. Jesus does this elsewhere. He quotes from Isaiah chapter 44 verse 6, where he says, I am the first and I am the last. This is what God said in the Old Testament. Christ once again uses this divine title to refer to himself. Now, if Jesus was just a mere prophet, he could not take divine titles of God that only apply to God and apply those to himself. We also see Jesus saying, I am the Alpha and the Omega. We see in John chapter 1 verse 3 that Jesus is in fact the creator of all things. In John 1:3 it says, all things that were made by Jesus. So that must exclude Jesus from creation itself. Therefore, he's not creation, he's creator. In Hebrews chapter 1 verse 3, it says that he is the exact imprint of the nature of God. So according to Hebrews, he shares nature with God. John chapter 1 verse 1, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, which can be translated, if you put it into if you want to use Jesus' name rather than word, you could say in the beginning was Jesus, Jesus was with God, and Jesus was God. I yield my time, you can have the rest.
Okay, so it looks like you brought in a lot of passages from the Bible which allegedly claims that Jesus is God. So the very first one that he used was the John 8:58, and you're saying because it actually reflects Exodus 3:14 where it says I am as well. So if you look at the English translations in Exodus 3:14, it says Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh, which is the Hebrew, translated as I am who I am. But if you look at the Greek translation, not the English translation, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, yes, you will see that it says I am he, ego eimi o on. I am the one being. This is not the correct translation in English, but in Greek it is correct. So in Greek of the Old Testament and the Greek of the New Testament, it does match because it says the same thing. So people who only rely on English translations, they will somehow say there is a correlation between Exodus 3:14 and John 8:58, but that is not true. Only in the original. So if you look at the Greek translation of these particular passages, you will see that it does not just say I am. In fact, if you look at the Hebrew translation of the same, done by the Jewish people, you say Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh, you say he who will be. Yes? So if you look at certain translations, the correct translations are given. So do not rely on this, because it doesn't make sense that the English translation actually doesn't represent the correct Greek nor the correct Hebrew in both cases. So that is an important point. Let's say for the sake of argument, Jesus is God. Yes? Let's say I give that point to Ben.
Perfect.
The point is, does Jesus in John 17:3 and 20:17 claim that he has a God? So now it is for you to point out to us, why does Jesus claim that he has a God?
Okay, thank you. Well timed. Okay, fantastic. So what he's referring to is what we call the Greek Septuagint, which is the Old Testament in the Greek language. Now we actually have an Orthodox brother here who I'm sure can speak the Greek language. Now I actually have the Greek on my phone. I have the Greek in the Orthodox Bible on my study desk. And if you read that translation, it is in fact I am. So I don't agree with your translation. I've got the book at home. I can bring it to you.
What does it say?
In John 8:58?
No,
I am.
In the Old Testament.
It's my time to speak.
Yeah.
So let me have a couple
Just
of seconds.
clarifying.
1 second. So yeah, you can have your time to speak. So in the Orthodox Bible, which is translated by Greek speakers, it does translate it the way I referred to. Now I want to touch on John 17:3. Hashim used John 17:3 to try to disprove that Jesus is in fact God. I don't think that can be done in John, because John's gospel has the highest Christology of all the gospels. I'm sure Hashim would agree with me. So you can't use a gospel that starts by calling Jesus the creator of all things. You can't use that gospel that begins with declaring that Jesus is the creator and then get into John 17 verse 3, and bearing in mind he ignores verse 1, 2, 4 and 5, because in 1, 2 he identifies God as his own father. He identifies himself as God's son. Now Hashim, being a Muslim, cannot believe Jesus said those words. He cannot believe Jesus said the words after this either, where Jesus says, now Father, give me that glory I had with you before the world began. Now no mere prophet can share glory with the Father before the world began, considering the Old Testament says God will share his glory with no one. So I would like to ask Hashim, why is he using a gospel that starts by calling Jesus the creator of all things? That cannot be done.
Okay.
If, like, it's not my time.
Oh yes.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. So also if you read, I'll use my time, go ahead. Rain.
So it's raining too. Shall we stop or?
I mean,
I don't think it's good for the cameras.
yeah, do you want to do this next week?
Well, we can do it later when it's.
leaving.
Are you leaving?